Hey, Sammer.
Hey, Jen.
What are you listening to this week? Welcome to Season 3 of What Are You Listening To? The weekly podcast created to foster community through music by sharing the stories behind the songs that soundtrack our lives. Some of the songs are old, some new, all good. I'm Jenn Tully, and this week I'm joined by Sammer Abousalbi, co-host of the Super Awesome Mix podcast, host and creator of the Super Awesome You podcast, and co-founder of the Super Awesome Mix podcast network. This week, Sammer and I took the assignment completely literally and are sharing the songs we've had on repeat this week. For the best listening experience, I recommend tuning into the show on Spotify. There you can hear the show with the songs we discuss incorporated. You can also find the show on Apple, Amazon Music, or wherever you stream. But if you're not listening on Spotify, be sure to give the playlist a listen and then tune into our conversation. With that, let's get started. Sammer, what are you listening to this week?
All right, so I've been on an EDM kick lately, and it's 100% related to the fact that I've been training for like a marathon. So I'm not running it this year, but I've been doing some halves, and I have a half coming up in a week actually. And EDM is just like a really good like genre of music to listen to when you're running because of like the consistent beat and everything.
Yep.
So I've got one new one and one oldie that have kind of been on repeat. So I'll start with the new one. And it's a song called Majesty by Apashe, I believe is how you pronounce it, although I could be way off. I got introduced to Apashe through, I think it was like a workout playlist on Spotify or something, where it's like part of, a bunch of different songs. And I just became obsessed with him because he introduces like a lot of classical elements. So this is quite literally like Mozart remixed, in the year 2020, which I think is incredible to have like music that is hundreds of years old being like kind of repurposed and redone in a way that works so, I think, really beautifully well. And I just love it because like all of his music is just perfect amp up music. So I actually have a playlist now that I've perfected over this year before every one of my races in New York. It's called, very aptly pre-run amp up playlist. And I will listen to it on like the subway ride out to the race or while I'm warming up. And it really gets me like in that headspace and gets me going. So I absolutely love this song. The other fun fact that I noticed, like Apple Music will tell you what playlist this is listed in, and apparently it's part of the Bengals warm-up music as well, like their pregame music. So I don't know how helpful that's being for them currently because they're not doing too great, but at some point they were a great team, so I'll take it.
Right. We'll see. Well, please, every eye is on the Chiefs right now, and it ain't because of football.
I know. Seriously, Taylor gets her hand on everything, doesn't she? It's amazing.
She's owning football now, and I really kind of love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I was not familiar with this artist, and I always love discovering someone new. That is one of my favorite things about doing the show. And I learned that Apashe is from Brussels, but I guess he lives in Montreal now. And so I like that as well, that he's kind of this seems like this international traveler guy,
right.
Which I think is like maybe part of just like the deal. Like as soon as you become a DJ or a successful EDM artist, like you just become like an international man of mystery immediately. But,
totally. Yep.
I love that about him. And this song just hooked me from the beginning. That opening lyric is so awesome. Yes. I'm the shit. Use your throne as my toilet seat. I'm like, yes, I immediately know this guy has got something to say. And this song is likely going to like pump me up, like for sure. And I think it has all the great elements of a perfect EDM song, right? Like you said, like you have this really cool, like orchestral sound in the back, but then you have this very like syncopatic beat that just like keeps coming back in. I love it. I thought that this song like lyrically and musically matched perfectly. And I love the ending. I love that cool, like orchestral ending where it just kind of fades out, and I can just see like you can feel the regalness of what he's singing about, right? And it's definitely not a song about humility.
No, it's quite the opposite, which is makes for a really good pre-game or pre-presentation or whatever, any kind of amp up playlist that you want to put this on. It'll work for you.
For sure. And I'm kind of here for that confidence too. Like we joke
Yeah.
about that a lot on the network, but I wish that I had like a hype man following me around, making up these insanely like braggadocious lyrics about me just like living my life, like how I'm rocking the carpool like no one else, right? Like I just think it's
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
amazing.
I know the dream, and shout out to Super Awesome You, is that we are our own hype men at some point, and we can we can hype ourselves up no matter what we're doing. So songs like this definitely help. But I'm glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was just so cool. And again, I like really nerd out over classical being introduced to a lot of like modern day music, and in a way that honestly makes me appreciate the classical songs like even more so, because like they're just kind of genius that they could still work and be so gorgeously done and played like with modern music today. I really appreciate the genius of a lot of these old composers.
Agreed. Yeah. And they didn't have, any of the technology that we have
No.
now, too. I mean, I think that's really like something that can stand the test of time. That's really, I agree with you on that for sure.
Nice.
Well, you said you had a new song for us, but your second pick is a throwback. So tell me what your second song is.
Yeah, so it's South Side by Moby, off of the, I think it's called Play and Play album, B-Sides. And so yes, bit of a throwback, over 20 years old, I believe. Moby, is like an artist that like I'd heard some songs of his growing up, but then more recently kind of like got into some of his earlier work. Been really living like or loving like the old 90s EDM stuff too. So I have like a lot of, there's like Moby in there, but there's also a lot of like drum and bass stuff from like Prodigy and
Yep.
and like all these great older bands that have been around for a long time. But I really like Southside. Funny enough, apparently Moby does not. It's his least favorite track off of this album.
Oh,
But I really like it. And so, Moby, don't be too hard on yourself. I think you've done a great job here. But yeah, what I really like about it's like, it's poppy. It's kind of like has this like happy sound. It almost sounds like this song I really like called Fast Talk by Houses. But it's like actually kind of a, it's speaking lyrically about like these kids that basically are just so kind of immune to violence, like there's even a line in there about how you're just like going to the south side or west side and you've got your sidearm. Like
yeah.
it's sung in this very upbeat way, but it's talking about these people, these children, I guess, like as he said, of just kind of riding around the streets, I believe in Chicago with guns in hand. So I really like that element. I love when a song kind of surprises me with like darker lyrics, but is set in like a very happy, like upbeat thing. Cause I think there's a message there, and that's really what he was probably trying to get across of just, kind of the reality of a lot of people where, yeah, you're having a good day, but also like you're ready for violence. And that's, an unfortunate thing in our society.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me. I have some of this like really similar notes on this song, but it was originally released in 1999 on the Play album, and then as a single, which featured Gwen Stefani. So that's the version I'm most familiar with, is that single version with Gwen. And it's funny that you're referencing sort of this like mid to late 90s EDM music, because that's when I was living in LA, and it was really kind of coming to prominence. I've mentioned this before, I think on the episode I did with Harrison, where I had a friend that worked at Herb magazine, URB, and so I would go to shows with him sometimes too. And yeah, saw some of those early Moby shows, saw some early Chemical Brothers shows.
Nice.
Things like that. So yeah, this always takes me back to that time period. And this song I always thought was just like about a bunch, like a group of friends going to a party. And especially maybe it's because I was living in LA, somebody lives in the South Bay, somebody lives in Hollywood, somebody lives in Silver Lake, so you're like driving around to pick up your friends and go to this party. And that's kind of what I always thought the song was about. And like with Gwen Stefani's voice, it just made it a party song for me. And then I went back when this was on your playlist and re-listened and looked at the lyrics and did some digging, and I was like, whoa, I was kind of a little off base here. But yeah, I mean, it's like you said, according to Moby, it was all about these kids being like overstimulated and desensitized to the point that nothing bothers them. And what struck me about that was that it was 1999 when he's doing this, right? Like this is before Euphoria. This is before we get some of the like really hard stuff. And so I think that was like the fact that he was kind of thinking about that back then is kind of amazing to me. And that's something I've been noticing a lot lately, is how some of these songs that came out in the late 90s or early 2000s were really kind of like predicting some of the hardships or some of the things that we would be feeling now. And I don't know if the artists were feeling it first because, you know, of the way they see the world or the way they think about things. But that's really been popping up a lot lately for me, where I'm like, wow, this is something we've been talking about for a really long time, and it's still not that different,
Right.
or things haven't changed as much as I would have thought they would have changed, in
Totally.
some
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like Matt and I kind of joke about that a lot whenever we talk about music from even the 60s and 70s, where I always say the joke, it's like, well, at least we solved it. So, you know, we don't need to be worrying about that anymore. And
Right.
of course,
Still worrying.
yeah, we're still worrying. So
Well,
here
and
we
you
are.
said too that this song reminded you of a song. What song did you say it reminded you of? A band called Houses?
Fast Talk. And I believe that it was done by Houses. Yeah.
Okay, because I wrote down here, and this is like, here I'm kicking it way back. But this musically always reminded me of the band Enigma. I don't even know if you even know them.
Oh,
It
no,
was
I'm
they
not
were like,
familiar.
they're like monks chanting or whatever. Like they have,
That's
um, but
awesome.
but musically, go back and check out Enigma if you haven't, folks. They are an interesting band that was sort of like this weird subgenre in the early '90s. Early to mid 90s, they had a couple hits. But yeah, this song, when I remember when this first came out, I was like, oh, is this an Enigma song? And then like Moby and, like I said, Chemical Brothers were kind of my early introduction to EDM. And so this sort of seemed like a little bit of a better evolution of a band like Enigma.
Nice.
Yeah, well, I kept it in the now this week, which is strange. I often will have a throwback tune, but you brought the throwback this week, Sammer. And so for my first pick, I went with a. It's not super new anymore, but this album has been on constant repeat since they dropped the whole album in February of this year, and I think they released this song as a single in August of last year. So the single's been out for a little over a year. But it's a song called New Gold by Gorillaz featuring Tame Impala and Bootie Brown. I love Gorillaz and I love Tame Impala. So this song I knew, like before I even listened to it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a slam dunk. You know, this is like the collaboration I always knew I needed.
Yes.
Um, and this whole album is so good. Like if you've not listened to the Cracker Island album 1,000 times, please go do it. There are so many amazing collabs on this album with Beck and Bad Bunny, Thundercat, who I also love, Stevie Nicks. There's a collab with Stevie Nicks. How can you like get better than Gorillaz and Stevie Nicks? And then like we talk about this some, like I was thinking about another like super awesome you reference maybe, but like, you know, those like word scrambles that people will send out and they're like, the first 4 words you see are your mantra for the week or whatever,
Uh-huh.
you know? And so when I listened to this song, the lyric that I heard, or the one thing that I understood super clearly, was we all play our part in the devil's cheer. And I was
Yeah.
like, ooh, I love that line. Like, I don't know why it resonated, but I think it's just like a reminder, like you were talking about, like we're kind of in control of that voice that motivates us or demotivates us. And so, like, maybe let's try and steer away from the devil's cheer when we can, you know? But what
Yeah.
do you think of this song? Do you like Gorillaz? Did you know this
Yeah.
song?
No, I love it. And you know, I talked about the Bad Bunny collaboration recently on a Super Awesome Mix episode,
Oh,
and I great, you know, collab there. And doing some research on that one, it again really reinforced this idea that they've said, which is like Gorillaz is almost like a really great backdrop for working with anyone. And I think that that's what's so interesting about them, is that like their sound can just plug in with anyone else's sound. And so I've heard the one with the Beck too, and I absolutely love that one. But yeah, it's just so cool. Like I think that they do a really good job of being able to kind of absorb the other artist into their track. And so you're right, like Tame Impala and Gorillaz makes all the sense in the world, because Tame Impala has such a cool, unique, kind of like hypnotic sound, and Gorillaz can play on that like really, really well. So I enjoyed this track a lot and I loved it. And that line also stood out to me, funny enough. I don't know if that says anything about us, but
right.
that one really did stand out.
Yeah, I've always thought they were so strong. And I was a fan of Blur too before, you know, which was kind of the real life person iteration before Gorillaz and the animation kind of came to life. But I just think that Gorillaz, like, I don't want to say blur out of the water, but like Gorillaz is just, I think, such a genius invention. And the way, they're visual artists as well as musical artists, I think that they're such a cool, they're just a cool band. And they're always super strong lyrically, all the way back to like Clint Eastwood from
Yes.
2001, and Dirty Harry, which was another fave of mine that features
So
Bootie
good.
Brown. So good. So yeah, like if you haven't taken a deep dive into Cracker Island, you must. And if you're not already a super duper Gorillaz fan, like go back and check out some of those early albums. Demon Days, so good. So yeah, so I could do many episodes about only Gorillaz.
That's awesome. I'd be
But
here for that.
right, I feel like maybe that'll be our next battle mix. Maybe we'll try and figure out the best Gorillaz collab.
That sounds great.
Well, and then as I transitioned into my second song, I wound it down a little bit to close out the playlist this week with a song called Light by Michael Kiwanuka. So this is not to be confused with Light On, which was my second pick from last week by Maggie Rogers. I really must be looking for some light, Sammer.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I love when that happens.
It's been a theme for me, steering away from the devil's cheer and looking for the light. So, but this is another artist that I have just like, the more I hear from him, the more I love him. And I discovered him in an episode of This Is Us, actually. I know he kind of rose to prominence because he did the theme song called Cold Little Heart, which was featured as the theme song to Big Little Lies, which was a great show. But I heard him in an episode of This Is Us a couple years before he did the Big Little Lies song. And I just immediately was intrigued by him because I couldn't tell if he was an older artist that they had pulled, like a Nick Drake, that was really kind of under the radar, but artists or singer-songwriters loved him, or if he was a new artist, a contemporary musician. So I was really happy to find out that he is fully a contemporary musician. He just has this really unique, cool sound, and I love his sound. I love his voice. I love his lyrics. I just think he's such a cool artist. What did you think of this song?
Yeah, I didn't know. I've watched This Is Us. I love it, and I didn't place it as being in an episode, but it makes total sense that it would be in that show. Just based off of like the vibe and the sound of it all. I loved it. I actually was reminded a little bit of 07, like some of their songs, like a little kind of loungy, cool, like atmospheric vibe to it, but not total, not 100% that, but just like a touch of that. So I loved this song. I had not heard it and just like got really excited to listen to it. And I just felt kind of a little bit more zen listening to it. It put me in like a happy place. So the title Light is appropriate. I might need to play it right after this recording for the rest of the day and just kind of live in that world.
Right.
I think we could all use some light in our lives for sure.
We could. And he has there's a great lyric in there too, where it says, "You're light to me, my only sun. You'll always shine for me." And I think that's so pretty. I think it's so simple. It's almost like a modern day, like happier take on "You Are My Sunshine." The old classic, like, and I feel like that's something you can also like say to yourself. It doesn't have to be about another person. When I had Samantha Bove on the show, we were talking a lot about, different kinds of love, familial love and romantic love and self-love. And I think turning some of these songs that I always associated as being like romantic love songs and kind of saying like, oh, well, what about, turning this on to myself or making this like a song about self-love has been, for whatever reason, strangely powerful for me. Well, not whatever reason, the reason, Sammer, because you host a whole podcast about it. But like your body, your actions, everything sort of follows your mind. And if you can get your head in a space where you're lifting yourself up, you feel uplifted, right? It sounds basic, yet it's so hard to do.
So difficult. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I will like literally finish recording an episode telling people about how they should like cheer themselves on and not be a critic, and then be like, that was a terrible episode. I'm the worst,
Right?
Just like, wait a minute.
Well, it's the same thing, like when I'm talking about the show and I'm like, well, I host this podcast and well, actually there's 2 that I'm hosting currently and there's 4 on our network, right as I'm saying, well, it's just this little thing that I do. And then I'm like, well,
Right.
wait a minute. Like, it's
I
not this
know.
little thing that I do. It's this really amazing thing that makes me so happy and the people that I work with so happy. Like, it's so funny
Totally.
the way we do that to ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We are our own worst enemies. I really like the idea of kind of playing love songs, but making them about like self-love. I'm going to try that
Yeah.
out. I like that
Try
a lot.
try it and see if it works the same way for you, because it really has been it's been a cool thing to just like turn that on myself. And I think when we were talking about it last week, we were talking about it in the context of the Stevie Wonder song, I Just Called to Say I Love You.
Mm-hmm.
And like leaving ourselves even little voicemails, where it's like, hey Jen, I just called to say that I love you and I mean it from the bottom of my heart.
I
Like,
love that
I'm
so
like,
much.
that's so
That's
good,
great.
right?
Yeah. That makes me really happy. I like that.
So that is our good. I think a perfect little ending for this episode where we again took the assignment very literally and just shared what we actually have on repeat this week. So thank you so much, Sammer, for joining me. It's been a minute since I've had you on the show, so I'm super glad to have you back on.
Yeah, thanks for
And
having me.
of course. And listeners, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out Sammer's solo podcast, Super Awesome You. It's a quick 10-minute listen and is designed to help you harness your motivation and achieve your goals. And of course, you can also always hear Sammer co-hosting the Super Awesome Mix podcast, and you can find both shows wherever you stream. As always, please be sure to download and share this episode. If you love listening, you can also drop us a review on Apple or Spotify. And last but not least, to stay informed on all things Super Awesome Mix, Super Awesome You, What Are You Listening to, and The Battle, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Super Awesome Mix. Thanks for listening, and please join me again next week to find your new favorite song.